All right. Happy to have on assistant coaches John Moore and Earl Watson from San Diego. Um, Great to have you on. Talk a little bit about this team. There's a lot of new pieces to the squad, and we know that there was a lot of guys that I was actually excited to see come back, like Kevin Patton Jr. and Deuce Turner, but unfortunately they hit the portal and are elsewhere. Kind of how you were attempting to rebuild this roster along with Coach Lav and just how that sorted out in the offseason.
Well, it's the nature of college basketball, isn't it?
Yeah.
You probably could ask the same question about just about everybody here. So we're not going to sit there and cry about it. We like who we have. We're going to continue with who we have. We like the guys we had last year that decided to leave. I don't think they left because they disliked us. They left because they had opportunities that we weren't able to give them in terms of the financial side. But with that said, the group that we have, Steven Jamerson decided to stick it out. And the other ones that we had injured last year, like David Simon, Santi Truitt, Dragos Lungu, they're all going to be very, very good players for us this coming year. So, and then, Steve is Coach Lavin is one of the all-time great motivators, and I think one of the best recruiters in college basketball, year in and year out. He is Mr. Positive. He does not look down the barrel and feel as though, gosh, we really lost a lot. He looks at it as though, who are the guys that we have that are opportunistic, and we look forward to coaching.
I mean, that was almost like very much indicative a year ago, where this was a team that a lot of people wrote off very early, but turned it around pretty quickly. I mean, you guys had 10 wins in the non-conference, played really well even in conference. I think it was like early conference. You had like the slate of like Gonzaga, St. Mary's, so like a little rough at the beginning, but San Diego was the team that kind of like came out of nowhere and really started to put it to some teams, surprisingly beat Santa Clara in conference. So trying to talk about like, is there any level of like that of taking the energy that you had a year ago and being able to say, hey, everyone wrote us off a year ago and we were still right there in the mix?
Yeah, I think at one point we lost our first 5 conference games to begin with. And then I think we won 5 of the next 6, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think that really spoke to the kind of players that we had at the time, but also the kind of players that we still have in the program that really believe in the concepts that our coaching staff and they truly bought into. And I think this group is very much so that way. They're a high buy-in group. I think the anticipation is that we will be good and that we will be good together. And it's not even about how many wins. It's more about, are we developing over the course of the year? And if you look back at Steve Lavin's coaching career, his teams always seem to do well in January, better in February, and exceptionally well in March. And I think that's what we're looking forward to this year.
I think that was very, like, again, like thinking about last year's, like it did seem they just got better and better and better as the year went on. I think like back to maybe like could have been considered a quote soft schedule early on. Then Arizona State happened, and then like which was the wow, that okay, and this is real and moment for a lot of folks, and it really does seem like, again, like a lot of the guys I think about, who's actually developing, who's going to be maybe some of those guys coming in. You talk about Steven Jamerson, who returned. I really liked what he was able to bring to the team a year ago. Who maybe are like at least like early on, and yes, a lot of new pieces still developing whatnot, that we should keep an eye on kind of going into this season, because obviously there are going to be some different names than a year ago.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to go back to something you were alluding to. We had, I think it was 12 or 13 double-digit. We were down by double digits, and we came back and won those games, which is really speaks to the motivational factor, but also the determination factor. So we've already talked about Steven Jamerson. I mentioned earlier a guy by the name of David Simon, who is from Canada, 6'11". I think he will be a really fine surprise to the WCC. Dragos Lungu is back, and he had a nice season before he became injured. Santiago lost his season because of injury. David lost his season because of injury. One of the new guys is Cody Blewett. Cody's going to be a really fine player. I think one of the things that I've admired about the portal, if there is something to admire in it. It's that you can find Division II players who've had great success on that level, and they're better than D1 guys who are averaging 2 or 4 points a game and played maybe 10 games over the course of their time, versus a guy who's coming in like Cody is, who played 32 games and played in an opportunity to play deeply into the playoffs, and was a kind of a 40, let's see, is this exactly right? Yeah, 40, 50, 90, almost 90% from the free throw line guy. Those guys, that translates. Big time. Earl, I'm hogging that.
That's it. Earl, you're a late addition to this staff just in the last like few weeks. What kind of brought you back to college basketball? Like obviously, like you played for Coach Lavin when you were at UCLA. What was it that kind of like brought you back, and what was it that made San Diego kind of like a right fit for you at this point?
I mean, Coach said it before. Coach Lavin's the greatest recruiter in America, not just of players, but also coaching staff. Putting together, I came. Literally 7 weeks I've been here, but joining a great staff with, the staff he has in place. He brought in myself and, volunteer assistant, Coach Hutt, which is amazing for Fresno State, previous year's head coaching. So it's a wealth of knowledge, a chance. The purity of the game is beautiful. And it's my basketball family. So I feel like home is where family is. Mm-hmm. I'm at home.
For you have so much NBA coaching experience, being an assistant and then also a head coach. Like what have you been able to take so far from those experiences to translate obviously to college game, which obviously is a completely different game, but there's still lessons obviously to be learned from one level to the other.
Yeah, I don't know if the game is that much different. More is the the rules of the game. Basketball is always basketball. I think people confuse that a lot. Accountability, discipline, development. That's any level of basketball. Even in my son's 4th grade team, he went that, right? And then the connection, I think, is where it's different. I think the biggest opportunity is in college to be a teacher. It's a lot of coaches in the NBA. It's a lot of coaches in basketball. But a chance to teach the game and build intentional identity through every player that creates a total sum of something bigger than ourselves is what we aim for daily. And those daily deposits for us has been like pounding a rock. Eventually it breaks.
Yeah, I love that note about the teaching because I think it is such a unique opportunity, and sometimes the portal kind of like throws that into chaos a little bit. But we've seen programs in the WCC that have kind of built on that. Like you see a lot of like Gonzaga, St. Mary's, who have a lot of retention for their guys, and they grow in those programs. And obviously, I know like that's eventually the goal to have at San Diego as well. Like, but kind of like talk about like how like you're trying like how that's getting ingrained from Coach Lavin through the coaching staff to the guys who the guys who are still around, how that sinks in.
I think Coach Lavin has always been a guy on lifelong relationships. So you talk about the greatest currency is development and actually being on the court, seeing that development come to fruition, right? Seeing it happen, seeing it actually be reality. And Coach Lav builds the bigger picture with a lot of hope, and then he gets you there slowly. And I think players I'm sure, Coach, you can speak to this. There's probably a couple players that could have left but stayed because of the development, like Steven Jamerson. Like he stayed because of the development and he saw himself getting better. And that's more important sometimes than monetary. And then how do we continue to build with that on the court and then build an NIL is every head coach's biggest task off the court, right? Program as well, universities as well. And Coach Lav, if anyone can create the synergy of both, we all know Coach Lav can do it.
With the San Diego program, like we saw some success a year ago. How with some of the guys that are going to be some of the newcomers, like who of the newcomer are, I kind of did ask that already, but what's going to stand out maybe about this team? Maybe that was a bit different from a year ago, because a lot of what we've talked about today with the number of coaches is how each team every year is different. Regardless, even if you have guys coming back, it's different. What's been different about this team?
Well, I think they want to be good for USD.
Yeah.
They're not looking ahead. They're not thinking to themselves, okay, I wonder if I'll get an NBA contract, or I wonder how I could play at Iowa State or at Duke or at North Carolina. They want to be the best for University of San Diego. And that's rare. Loyalty is loyalty is loyalty.
Yeah.
And if you have guys who come back and are loyal to your program and could have, let's be honest, a lot of people are getting poached. A lot of people are being invited to be in other programs midway by November, sometimes by December, sometimes into deeper into the season. But it happens very, very early. So for our guys who are loyal, who chose to stay, that's such a gift that they've given to each other and a gift that they've given to us. And there's loyalty in our program, the coaching staff. Earl Watson is here because of Steve Lavin. Justin Hudson has joined our staff because of Steve Lavin and the players that he sees in our program. So there is a factor that you belong to something and you want to try harder. I heard something the other day that culture is built on care. And if we can get guys to care and get guys to care for each other and care together, I think that helps you win games. Flat out. Sounds a little corny, but it's tried and true. From my experience as a college coach, the more you get guys to care, the more chance we have to do well.
And I agree. Like, I think, again, can see it. Like, you look at the programs across the country who do well and are consistently do well. That seems to just be a consistent factor with all of them. That there's that loyalty, there's that want to do well at that program, and it's kind of like almost a singular focus in what they're doing as opposed to looking at the outside and everything else. Looking at this the non-conference schedule, and thinking about on the court, like what are going to be some of those early tasks or early like challenges that you guys will face? Obviously, I think Arizona State's back on the schedule again, but that's a little bit deeper into the non-conference. Like, what are going to be some maybe early, and maybe it's not even a win or loss, but what's kind of like some benchmarks that you're thinking about, what this team needs to improve on as you move forward?
Then we talk about that. We having a young roster for the second consecutive season. Two of the youngest rosters in program history. Is always experience, right? But through that experience, you also have the other side. You have a player that's going to believe that his game is growing because they have a phenomenal game. And now you're building, legacy through certain players. Like a David Simon could have a big game early that changes his career for the rest of his life. And those are the bigger picture, or the windows we're looking towards and looking through. We're looking through the positive. How can we learn? How can we grow? Sometimes in the game because of lack of experience. And then can we get as many players as possible to take leaps forward, but not missing any steps? And that's the beauty of Coach Lav. He's big on the big picture. He's also big on, small things make big things happen. And we understand that through development, through accountability, through discipline, not only just in games, but every second we touch the court in practice.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys, for hopping on. Great to chat with you. Obviously, the San Diego team is obviously young. It's going to be an experience, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch and actually see these guys grow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Let me just turn that off, and then just get the record.